Hello everyone and welcome back to Dreadline Stories. I know many of you use these videos to fall asleep, so before you drift off, I'd love it if you could leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from around the world. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this video. I never believed all those old truck stop stories, ghost hitches, phantom kids, black dogs running alongside your rig at 3 a.m., trucker campfire tales. That's what I thought. But that was before I took the Route 46 haul through the Nevada flats last October. I was driving solo that month. My usual partner, Ricky, had torn up his knee unloading a pallet and was stuck home with a brace. It was supposed to be an easy overnight run, groceries from Reno out to a tiny store near Eerie. Long stretch of nothing, then a motel, unload, and back by dawn. I figured I'd catch a podcast or two, maybe stop at that diner off exit 212 for pie. About 40 miles past the last gas station, my headlights picked up something on the shoulder. I slowed instinctively, thinking it might be a deer. Instead, I saw a man, or what I thought was a man, waving both arms, trying to flag me down. Long gray coat, wide hat pulled low. In the mirror of my headlights, his face was lost in shadow. I should have just kept going. Everything inside me screamed it. But years on the road, you see enough real accidents. Drivers stranded, tourists who hit a coyote and broke an axle, that you feel responsible to at least check. I braked hard, hazard lights flashing, and rolled to a stop maybe 10 yards past him. When I climbed out and stepped around the cab, he was gone, just vanished into the dark. I scanned the brush on both sides of the road, called out, even walked around the truck with a flashlight. Nothing. That cold, crawling feeling of being watched started at the base of my neck. I shook it off, climbed back in, and locked the doors. As soon as I put the rig in gear, I heard it, faint but clear. A voice from the sleeper cab. "Hey buddy, thanks for stopping." I nearly jumped out of my seat. The sleeper was empty. I whipped around with my flashlight. Nobody there. But the smell hit me then. Old leather, wet dirt, and something sharp like iron. I floored it. Didn't stop until I hit the motel lot, tires kicking gravel everywhere. Checked the sleeper again, with the motel manager standing nervously by. Empty. "Probably just tired nerves," he said, eyeing me like I was crazy. I tried to sleep that night, but kept waking up to creaks in the trailer, like someone was moving around back there. At one point, I swear I heard breathing, slow and steady, inches from my ear. Next morning, I did my delivery. The clerk asked if I was okay. "You look like hell," she laughed. I must have. Pale, eyes sunken. Before I left, she gave me a weird little charm on a leather string. "Just in case," she winked. "Haven't taken it off since. And you can bet, every time I drive that stretch of Route 46 now, I keep my eyes dead ahead. No stopping for anyone. Not ever again." I was back on Route 46 less than 3 weeks later. Couldn't avoid it. Dispatcher had me lined up for another grocery run, and nobody wants to lose easy money because of old ghost stories. Besides, I'd convinced myself it had all been exhaustion. Long hauls do weird things to your brain. This time, though, I was prepared. The little charm the store clerk gave me dangled from my rearview mirror, swinging side to side, every bump in the asphalt. I'd stocked up on strong coffee, even brought along my old hunting knife. Not that it would help much against whatever that had been, but it gave me some thin sliver of comfort. Everything was quiet until around 2 a.m. That's when the radio cut out. Static poured through the speakers, even though I was playing a podcast off my phone. Then, without warning, it was his voice. Same gravelly rasp I'd heard in my sleeper. "Hey buddy, thanks for stopping." I nearly jackknifed, my hands locked on the wheel so tight they cramped. The voice faded, replaced by the hiss of dead air. I pulled into the next rest area, just a patch of gravel and a battered picnic table. I stepped out into the cold desert night, trying to steady my breathing. That's when I noticed footprints in the dirt, circling my truck. Deep prints, like someone heavy had been pacing round and round, sometimes doubling back. When I followed them with my flashlight, they ended abruptly about 20 feet behind the trailer, just stopped. No return path, no signs of someone heading off into the scrub, like whoever, or whatever, made them, had simply vanished. I didn't bother finishing my break. I jumped back in, locked the doors, and gunned it. All the way to Ely, the charm on my mirror kept swinging violently, though the truck was on smooth, level road. Delivery went fast. By the time I rolled into the diner off exit 212, dawn was breaking. The waitress there knew me by sight, asked why I was so pale. I told her bits and pieces, enough to get it off my chest. She just nodded, like she'd heard it before. "You're not the first driver to come through here with stories," she said, pouring my coffee. "They say he was a drifter. Got picked up by a trucker back in the 70s, murdered him, then tried to steal the rig and crashed. Died out there in the flats. Some think he's still hitching rides, looking for another driver to finish what he started." She slipped a battered St. Christopher medal onto the counter. "Truckers around here leave one hanging on their dash. Can't promise it works, but most say it helps." I added it next to my leather charm. Haven't heard his voice since, but I still catch the occasional flash of movement in my mirrors, always right outside the glow of my taillights. And I'll tell you one thing. I don't stop for anyone on that road now. Not for a stranded car, not for a lone figure waving me down. Never again. I was on my third cup of coffee by the time I crossed into Arkansas, been behind the wheel since dawn, hauling a flatbed load of steel beams to Little Rock. The company was desperate for drivers, and with overtime paying almost double, I couldn't say no, even if I was running on fumes. My cousin Daryl had tagged along for the ride, mostly for the change of scenery. His landlord was threatening eviction, and a few nights on the road sounded better than waiting around to get locked out. We spent the first 100 miles joking about old high school screw-ups. But once we hit that thick stretch of pine forest, the sun disappeared behind the trees, and it felt like the temperature dropped 10 degrees. That's when my CB crackled loud enough to make Daryl jump. "Breaker, you boys best keep your eyes on the shoulder up ahead." It wasn't on Channel 19. I hadn't even touched the dial. "What the hell was that about?" Daryl asked. I shrugged it off. Probably some long-haul prankster. A few miles later, though, it stopped being funny. Right past mile marker 74, a blue pickup sat half in the ditch, hood up, steam pouring out like a busted radiator, and a woman in a red jacket was waving both arms like she was guiding a damn plane in. Daryl reached for the door handle. "Don't," I said, grabbing his wrist. "What? We're just gonna leave her out here? Something's off. Nobody breaks down on this stretch. Locals all avoid it. There's another service road 2 miles back." He rolled his eyes, but didn't open the door. As I eased by, she stepped closer and slammed her hand against the cab. I jumped so bad, I nearly swerved into the ditch. When I looked in the mirror, she was gone. Just empty road stretching out behind us. We didn't say a word for the next 30 miles. Only when we stopped at a gas station did Daryl finally mutter, "Maybe she was never really there." I tried to laugh it off, but that night at the motel, I went out to check my rig, found long, greasy handprints smeared across the passenger window, 5 dark streaks running down the glass like melted tar. The next morning, I told the story to an old-timer at the diner counter. He didn't look surprised, just shook his head. "Let me guess, woman in a red jacket? Around mile 74. My mouth went dry. "She's been out there for years," he said. "Some folks say she's bait, trying to get you to stop for someone else hiding in those trees. Others say she's looking for the driver who hit her and kept going. Either way, nobody who picks her up makes it past Little Rock." We drove the last leg home in dead silence. Daryl kept glancing in the side mirror. I didn't blame him. I couldn't shake the feeling that if I looked long enough, I'd see her there, riding with us, waiting to finish what started on that dark Arkansas road. I'd been home for nearly a week when the dream started. Every night, same thing. I was back in the cab, the dash lights dim, the highway stretching on forever. The woman in the red jacket stood in the middle of the road, her face hidden by a curtain of black hair. I'd swerve, feel the rig tip like it was going to roll, and then I'd wake up with my heart clawing at my ribs. Daryl called me one evening, his voice sounding smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Man, I think I brought something back," he whispered. I tried to laugh it off. "What, like bed bugs?" "Number her. I keep seeing red out the corner of my eye. And last night there were handprints on my apartment window, second floor. I didn't want to admit it, but I'd been seeing flashes of red myself, in store windows, across the street, even once in my rearview mirror, standing behind my parked truck, always gone the second I looked straight at it. A couple days later, I pulled into my usual truck stop to fuel up before a short local haul. I was topping off the tank when an old driver I'd spoken to a few times shuffled over. Name was Clyde, been on the road since the 70s. His skin was leathered from decades of sun through glass. "You look like hell, son," he said. I gave a half laugh. "Been having weird dreams, that's all." "Red jacket?" he asked, dead serious. I nearly dropped the fuel nozzle. "You know about her?" He nodded slowly. "She don't stay on that stretch. If you notice her, it means she noticed you. Some say you gotta settle the debt to shake her." "Settle how?" But Clyde just shook his head and shuffled off, like he'd already said too much. That night, I called Daryl again. His phone rang and rang before going to voicemail. Next morning, I drove by his apartment. Police tape crisscrossed the doorway. Neighbors stood on the curb whispering. A paramedic was rolling out a covered stretcher. My stomach twisted into a hard knot. I didn't stick around to hear what happened. That evening, back home, I found a single muddy handprint smeared across my front door. Same long streaks running down, like someone, or something, had stood there pressing its palm against the wood for hours. I started leaving my porch light on, started checking the locks 3 times before bed, but deep down, I had this cold certainty. A porch light wasn't going to keep her out, and every time I closed my eyes, I braced for that dream highway to come roaring back, waiting to finish what it started. I've been driving long-haul trucks for close to 12 years now, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that the road has a memory. Miles of asphalt crisscrossing the country, carrying the weight of every story that ever played out along its shoulders. Accidents, breakups, breakdowns, and sometimes things that never make it into any report. Things like what happened to me last fall, out on Route 29, somewhere between Amarillo and the New Mexico border. It was late October, just after harvest season. I'd picked up a refrigerated load in Tulsa that needed to make it to a distribution hub outside Phoenix. Tight schedule, 2 days max. The dispatch didn't give me much room to rest, but that was pretty normal. I've always been a night driver anyway. Fewer idiots on the road, less traffic, just me and the hum of the rig under a ceiling of stars. About halfway through Texas, things started to feel off. It was one of those nights where the moon looked too big and too bright, lighting up the plains like a stage. The CB was quiet, not another set of taillights for what felt like hours. I switched off the radio because it was just static and settled into that hypnotic rhythm of dark road and white lines. Then I saw someone standing on the shoulder. I nearly jumped out of my skin, hit the air horn, and swerved just enough that the trailer rocked hard. When I glanced in the mirrors, there was nobody there. No reflective vest. No sign of a stalled vehicle. Just empty road unrolling behind me. I told myself I'd imagined it. Too much coffee. Not enough sleep. Kept driving. 20 miles later, I saw them again. Same figure, just ahead on the shoulder, but clearer this time. A tall, thin man, wearing what looked like dark jeans and a plaid shirt. His face was turned away, like he was watching something out over the fields. I slowed down, rolled past at maybe 30, trying to get a better look. He didn't move, didn't even flinch when my rig rumbled by with the lights full on him. About a mile down the road, I finally exhaled. Tried to laugh it off, but my throat was dry. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see someone chasing me. An hour later, I pulled into a rest area to splash water on my face. The lot was empty except for an old farm truck parked crooked near the vending machines. Its hood was cold when I passed by. Hadn't been running for hours, maybe days. The driver's seat was empty. When I got back in my cab and flipped the dome light on, my breath caught in my chest. There was mud on my driver's side floor mat, fresh, damp mud, and a faint handprint smeared across the inside of my door, like someone with wet fingers had closed it from the inside. I didn't stay long enough to look around. I fired up the engine and took off, driving straight through till dawn. To this day, I don't take Route 29 at night anymore. And if dispatch ever tries to put me on that run again, I'll tell them exactly where they can shove it. I made it to Phoenix the next afternoon, running on caffeine, adrenaline, and the shaky conviction that I could just forget what happened somewhere back on Route 29. I didn't tell anyone at the depot about it. Partly because it sounded insane. Partly because every driver has a handful of ghost stories, and nobody wants to be the butt of the next locker room joke. I dropped the trailer, grabbed a shower at the truck stop, and tried to sleep in my cab. Tried. The whole time, I couldn't stop replaying that handprint. It was too real. The mud had been damp, the streaks clear, and in the back of my mind was this nagging feeling that it wasn't done with me. My next run was eastbound, empty trailer back to Oklahoma. I thought maybe daytime would make it easier, safer, but the dread only got worse as the miles ticked by. Somewhere outside Clovis, I started hearing it. Like nails dragging along the inside of the sleeper cab wall. I turned off the blower, listened. Nothing. But when I started rolling again, the noise came back. I pulled over, popped the door, and checked the sleeper with a flashlight. Empty. Just my bed, my cooler, the usual road trash. I convinced myself it was something loose behind the paneling, or a branch caught in the undercarriage. Anything to keep from losing it completely. I got back on the highway. About 40 minutes later, the smell hit me, like pond water and rot, so strong I gagged. I cranked down the windows, tried to air it out, but it just clung to the cab. That's when my eyes drifted to the rearview mirror. There was a face behind me, pressed up against the little sliding window that separates the sleeper from the cab. Filthy, hollow eyes, teeth bared in something between a grin and a snarl. I swerved so hard the whole rig shuddered. When I looked again, it was gone. I didn't stop till I hit Amarillo. Parked right under the floodlights at a Love's, too terrified to close my eyes. I must have sat there for hours, doors locked, engine idling. Every shadow that moved across my hood made me flinch. Eventually, I must have dozed off, because I woke up to the sun blazing through the windshield. No smell, no scratches. No sign anyone or anything had ever been there. I put in for a different route after that. Local runs only, no overnight hauls, no lonely stretches of two-lane blacktop. It means less money, but I'll take empty pockets over whatever the hell tried to ride with me that week. And on the rare chance I find myself driving past a rest stop on Route 29 at night, I keep my eyes dead ahead, because I know if I look too long, I'll see that man again, watching me, waiting for the next ride.